Two veterans walk into the VA with the exact same hair loss. Same bald patch, same mirror. One collects $3,600 a year for it. The other collects nothing. And the only thing different isn't the hair. It's which door their claim walked through. Here's what flips it. The smartest move on a hair loss claim is often to chase a rating that pays $0 a month, on purpose. Stay with me, because that sounds backwards until you see what a zero actually buys.
I'm Kim, and let's start with the door that pays nothing. Male pattern and female pattern balding, the kind almost everybody gets with age, that's androgenetic hair loss. VA generally treats it as normal, not a disease or an injury of service, so it does not get service connected on its own.
Fenrir here, second door, a real code. Alopecia areata, the autoimmune kind that drops hair in round patches. 7831 on the schedule.
This is Tiffany, and the version going around is that hair loss can't be worth anything to the VA. Half true at best. There's a third code, scarring alopecia, 7830, and there's a whole road past the codes that pays the most of all.
That road is a secondary claim, and it's where the money hides. The examiner barely looks, 10 minutes, writes down pattern baldness, and the claim's dead on arrival. But the same veteran, sent through the right door, walks out with a check. Same head, different diagnosis. Tiffany, there's a sharper version of this question that comes up constantly. Take it.
Gladly, because it's the one I'd have asked too. Picture the veteran who filed for hair loss and got denied as pattern baldness, wondering, did I file the wrong thing? Short answer, maybe not wrong, just the wrong door, and we'll walk you to the right one.
So let's read the schedule together, page by page, no opinions, just the codes. If you want the full rating schedule and our free VA benefit tools, they live at va.professorerica.com. First stop, the two codes and the three doors.
Three doors, that's the whole map, and the diagnosis on the exam picks which one you walk through.
And that's the part that quietly wrecks good claims. A veteran with genuine distressing hair loss can get routed to the wrong door by a single line on an exam, and the money's gone before anyone reads the file. Here are all three doors, side by side.
Door 1 is androgenetic, the pattern kind, and it pays $0 because the VA won't service connect it on its own. Door 2 is the medical hair loss, areata or scarring, and that lives on the schedule, 0 to 20%. Door 3 is a secondary claim, and Door 3 is where the real monthly money usually is.
Before we crown Door 2 the winner, one catch. Areata by itself usually rates 0.
Wait, so she loses
She loses nothing. That's the misread. A 0 isn't a denial, it's a service-connected 0, and it's a key. Hold that word key, because Door 3 needs it.
Okay, so pin that down for me straight. If ARIA is only 0%, why would anyone even bother filing it?
Because the zero is the door. One pot of paperwork opens everything behind it. Service connection is the thing you're actually buying page by page, and the check can come later through Door 3.
So write this down before we move. Areata, 7831, 0% with scalp and face loss, 10% only if you lose all body hair. It's a small scheduler number that hides a large door. That distinction is the whole video. Before we keep going, one small favor that actually moves the needle. If this is landing for you, tap like, then subscribe and turn on the bell so you do not miss the rest. 2 taps, completely free, and it pushes this in front of more people who need it. %. That's the ceiling on scarring alopecia, and for a lot of veterans that ceiling is the wrong place to stop looking.
Scarring alopecia is code 7830, and the word scarring is doing the work. This is hair that's gone because the follicle was destroyed, and unlike the pattern kind, it can be tied to.
Tied how? Give people the real causes.
A burn on the scalp. A shrapnel or injury scar. Chronic friction from a helmet or gear worn for years. Skin diseases that scar, like folliculitis decalvans or discoid lupus that lands on the scalp and burns the follicles out. Any of those if the record ties them to your service, and the scarring alopecia rides in on that. That's what I'd call the paper trail rule. The hair loss doesn't stand alone, it stands on whatever caused it, and the cause is what has to connect. So a scalp that's scarred from a documented in-service burn is a very different claim from one that just thinned with age, even if they look similar in a photograph, and the whole fight is the cause, not the bald spot.
And here's where the schedule gets generous in a way people miss. 7,800 covers disfigurement of the head, face, or neck. The scalp is on the head, so a scarred scalp that disfigures can rate there instead, and you take whichever pays higher.
Look, the way 7,800, forget the ladder for a second, just watch the numbers. It climbs way past 20. 10% for one characteristic of disfigurement, 30 for one feature, 50 for two, and 80% for three or more.
So a scarred hairless patch that also depresses the skin, or leaves a wide discolored adherent scar, can jump the 20% ceiling and rate as disfigurement. You don't get both, you take the higher. For the right veteran, that's the difference between a nod and a real rating, and it's sitting in the same code section people skim right past.
So the honest headline is, the scar can out-earn the hair, which raises the real question, what if there's no scar at all, just a wrecked life? Because sometimes the wreckage is the whole claim, no scar, just what it did to you.
This is door 3, and it's the one I promised pays the most, a secondary claim. When a service-connected condition causes a second condition, that second one gets service-connected too, and it gets its own rating.
The paper trail rule again, to borrow Erica's phrase. I read claim files the way I read 3 books in parallel, and the winners all share this. The hair loss is already service-connected even at 0, and then the thing it caused rides in on it.
The heaviest secondary here is mental health. If disfiguring hair loss drives a diagnosed depression or anxiety, that's rateable under the mental disorders formula. This is delicate, so I want it exact, not hyped. Let me get someone who lives inside these Nexus rules on the line.
Hold on, before the mechanics. The question isn't whether hair loss is a disability, it's whether it's service-connected first. 2 different fights, and people lose the second one by skipping the first.
So say the hair loss is connected. How does the depression actually attach?
You need 2 things, a real diagnosis of the depression or anxiety, and a nexus, a clinician saying this mood condition is at least as likely as not caused by the disfigurement. With both, it rates on its own. 30%, for instance, is occupational and social impairment with an occasional drop in.
What about chemo, though? Cancer treatment hair loss, isn't that a secondary?
I can't speak to any one file, but the pattern with medication hair loss is almost always the same. It grows back. Chemo loss and thyroid med loss tend to be transient, and transient loss rarely holds a rating. Be honest about that on the claim. You two see the money side better than I do.
Okay, the money side. Watch what a single secondary does. Picture a veteran, call her Denise, already service-connected at 50%. Her disfigurement secondary rates 20. 50 combined with 20 isn't 70, it's 60.
I printed the rate table, it's right here. 50% alone pays $1,132.90 a month in 2026. 60% pays $1,435.02.
So the door that started at a $0 hair loss rating ends at $302.12 more every single month. That's $3,625 a year. Remember the gap I opened with? That's it. That's the gap, and it never came from the hair.
Everything so far keeps your rating. The next 10 minutes is where people either grab that door or walk away from it.
Here's what you actually lose if you pick this wrong tonight. Chase a rating that pays 0 and you might spend a year on an exam for no check. Skip it and you can lock yourself out of the door that pays. Tiffany thinks you file the 0 on purpose. Fenrir thinks that's paperwork for nothing. Both of you make the case.
File it. A 0% service connection is not a consolation prize, it's the effective date and the open door. The day it's granted, your clock starts. and every secondary you file later reaches back to.
The premise is wrong. Fight for a 0? Saddest trophy there is.
That's the point though. Fenrir hit her strongest claim head-on, the effective date. Is that real, or is it a slogan?
It's real, it's also worth nothing if no secondary ever comes. You've spent a C&P exam and a year of waiting to bank a date you might never cash.
Except the one time it matters, it's the whole claim. This is my gym membership. Honestly, I pay it every month swearing I'll finally…
Anyway, the number that matters is still the effective date. Say it with me.
Tiffany, you said the clock reaches back. Sit on that word, reaches. Where's that actually written?
I want to say it's around a year of back pay in a lot of cases, but I don't trust my memory on an act on it number, so pull the page. VA.gov has a whole page on the 0% rating, and the upshot is plain. Service connection still counts at 0, and the rules let a secondary claim ride on it later and pay real money even though the original sits at 0. That's the page. Write that down, not my guess.
Fenrir, that's the point handed to you directly. If the 0 legally opens the secondary, does your objection survive?
Partly, if a secondary is realistic, file the 0, I'll give you that. But a stable scalp patch with no depression, no worsening, no plan? That 0 is a filing cabinet nobody opens.
Fair. So the real fork isn't file or skip. It's, is there a door behind the 0?
Then let me pose it the way a lot of you are typing it, and it's got a wrong turn baked in. People ask, how high can the hair loss rating itself go? The real question isn't how high the hair goes. It's what the hair loss does to you and how high that goes, because the scheduler hair cap's low and the secondary doesn't. So here's where it lands. File the 0 when a secondary or a worsening is realistic, because the effective date and the open door are worth more than the check that year. Skip it only for an isolated, stable patch with nothing behind it. That's the honest verdict, and it's the unlock. But miss the effective date and the same rule runs in reverse. Your back pay stops at whatever day you finally file. That clock's coming up next.
Okay, I have to say it because this next part is personal for a lot of women who served. The regulation bun, worn tight for years, is a real cause of hair loss.
It has a name, traction-alopecia, hair pulled out at the roots by chronic tension. And the frontal scarring kind shows up right at the hairline. If anyone wants to check, the medical literature on it is thick.
And the service can't quite say this wasn't us. The Army loosened its grooming standards in 2021, and part of the stated reason was to prevent the exact hair loss the tight bun caused. So when a woman veteran's hairline scarred from years of a required style, that's a documented, connectable cause, and it rates under 7830 or higher under 7800 if it disfigures.
Which brings us back to Denise, and I take this one like my coffee, black, no sugar, because it's a bitter start with a good finish. Remember her? 50%. Then the hair loss. Denise filed hair loss once and got the $0 denial, pattern loss, case closed. Years later, a good exam finally named it, scarring at the hairline from the bun, service connected. Not the money door yet, but the door.
And that's when it earned its check. The 0 opened the secondary, the disfigurement rated, the depression she'd carried finally rated 2 and 50 became 60. $302 more a month. All off a rating that started at nothing. Same shape over and over in these claims, everything hinged on what the file said the day the rater opened it.
Wait, so the exact same head, the exact same hair, twice?
Same head, twice. The only thing that changed was the door. So here's what I'd actually do. Get a real dermatology diagnosis before you file, in writing, naming the type. Areata, scarring, traction, not just hair loss. Because the diagnosis you bring is the door you get, and both things are true here. The hair rating is small and the door behind it can be large. Carry that one home. Before I run it back, try to say the one number that mattered most to you today. Here's the short version. Hair loss on the schedule is small, 0 to 20%, but the diagnosis you file picks a door, and the secondary door is where the real money lives.
And the thing you just protected is the effective date. File the service-connected 0 now, and every secondary you ever add reaches back to today, not to whenever you finally get around to it.
Next time, the rating that pays more the less you can do, and why a normal-looking test result can still win it.
Tonight's move, book a dermatology visit and make them name the type of hair loss in writing before you touch a claim form. The word on that note is the door.
My favorite fact is still that the whole $302 swing started from a rating worth 0, a key that pays nothing and opens everything.
If this walked you to a door you didn't know was there, subscribe and stick with us, because we keep these rating numbers current every single year, condition by condition. And here's the one I can't settle for you. Should the VA rate the hair loss itself higher, or is the depression it causes the fairer thing to measure? Tell us where you land. That's it from the table today. Take the diagnosis, find your door, and I'll see you in the next one. Same teacher, brand new lesson next time. Thanks for watching. This is Professor Erica.